You were never meant to hold the blessing with a trembling hand and call it wisdom when it slips away. You were meant to stand where God placed you, even when the ground feels thin, even when the night has been long, even when your own thoughts have started speaking like tired strangers. There is a quiet grief in heaven when a chosen one gets so exhausted that surrender looks easier than trust. Not because God is fragile, but because love watches you wrestle with a door that was never meant to close on you. You have felt that kind of hour in a bedroom with the lamp still on, or in a parked car with your forehead against the steering wheel, or in the kitchen while cold water runs over a cup you forgot to drink from. The room stays the same, but your chest begins to carry a different weather. You breathe, and something in you says, "I cannot keep doing this." That sentence is not rebellion, it is fatigue, wearing the clothes of surrender. God sees the difference. He sees the place where your strength ended and your soul began to whisper. What looks like collapse to people may be the exact place where heaven starts speaking more clearly. You are not being shamed for being tired. You are being found in the very place where you thought you were least reachable. C.S. Lewis understood something few people can bear to say out loud. The soul often learns its deepest truths in the hallway between ache and hope. He wrote like a man who had watched sorrow sit at the table and still refused to let despair name the meal. That is why this moment in your life feels so sharp, so personal, so impossible to explain to anyone who did not live inside your silence. You may have smiled through conversations while your mind was counting losses like coins on a dark floor. You may have kept working, kept answering, kept moving, while inside you were asking whether the promise had already passed you by. But God does not measure you by how polished your face looks when the pressure rises. He measures the weight of what you have carried without applause. That is where chosen ones are often proven, not in triumph, but in endurance. And endurance is not glamour, it is holy refusal. It says, "I will not let the ache have the final word." Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. It says that even a wounded heart can still be under the hand of God. And if your life has felt like a long night, then this word is not decoration. It is a lantern. What has worn you down is not only the burden itself, but the constant feeling that you should have been stronger by now. You have watched other people seem lighter, quicker, more certain, while you have had to gather yourself from the floor of your own thoughts. There are mornings when your shoulders rise before your feet even touch the ground, as if the body knows the day will ask for more than you can give. There are evenings when your hands go still around the phone, because one more message, one more delay, one more disappointment would feel like too much. That kind of exhaustion can make a holy thing look like a mistake. It can make a destiny look like an interruption. But heaven does not confuse weariness with failure. What is being revealed is that you have been carrying a weight that was never meant to define you. Some burdens are not your identity. They are the evidence that you have been in a battle. The old lie says, if you were really chosen, this would be easy. The truer word says, if you were really chosen, heaven would not abandon you in the hard place. You are not disqualified because you are tired. You are being refined in the very pressure that tried to convince you to quit. And here is the painful part. When you are exhausted, you do not only question the road, you question the one who gave it to you. That is why grief can feel like betrayal, even when it is only grief. You look at the closed door, the delayed answer, the friendship that changed, the opportunity that vanished, and something inside you asks whether obedience was worth the cost. The enemy loves that hour because he knows tired hearts are tempted to interpret silence as absence. But silence is not absence, and delay is not denial. Sometimes what feels like the longest wait is the place where your roots go deeper than your feelings. A seed does not panic underground because the surface is still closed. It keeps becoming what it was created to be. You may not see it yet, but your endurance is forming a shape that quick victories never could. The tearing in you is not proof that God has left. It may be proof that something false is being broken away. There is a difference between being abandoned and being prepared. One leaves you empty, the other leaves you standing differently, and the difference will matter when the blessing finally speaks. If your heart has been bruised by repeated almosts, then you know how dangerous a little hope can feel, almost answered, almost restored, almost healed, almost certain. The mind starts protecting itself by lowering expectation because disappointment feels safer than desire. Yet chosen people often live in that thin place where hope refuses to die even after being wounded many times. That is not naivete. It is resistance. It is the quiet stubbornness of a soul that knows God too well to stop at the first dark report. You have seen the old pattern. A hard season comes, then fear starts narrating your future, then the body starts agreeing with what fear said. But a new pattern is being written in you now. The blessing is not fragile, and neither are you. You have survived too many inner winters to treat this one as final. The road may still be rough, but rough does not mean ruined. And the more honestly you name what hurts, the less power the lie has over your breathing. You're not asking for fantasy. You're asking for the courage to keep standing where grace has already met you. The strange mercy in this season is that God does not waste your almost giving up. He meets you there, in the place where your hands begin to loosen, and your prayer becomes smaller than a whisper. You may think you are only hanging on by habit, but heaven sees a thread that is still connected. That thread matters. It is the same kind of thread that kept Israel moving through days that felt impossible. The same kind of thread that kept the psalmist speaking even when the tears were heavy enough to blur the room. Scripture is full of people who reached the edge of their own strength and found that God had been waiting there first. That is not a story for perfect people. It is a story for the bruised, the delayed, the misunderstood, the one whose courage has been reduced to one more step and one more breath. Your weakness does not cancel the call. It may be the place where the call becomes audible again, because when you cannot rely on your own power, you finally learn how near God has been all along. And that nearness is not theoretical. It is the kind that meets you while the kettle boils, while the laundry waits, while the tears come quietly and surprise you. There are moments when the body tells the truth before the mouth does. Your throat tightens before your mind admits you are discouraged. Your chest sinks before you confess that hope has started feeling expensive. Your eyes rest on the same spot in the room because moving would require deciding again, and deciding again feels harder than staying still. This is where the soul can become honest in a way it has avoided for months. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. You are tired of pretending that everything is fine when something sacred in you has been asking for help. That honesty is not weakness. It is the beginning of return. God does not despise the sentence, "I am almost done." He meets it with a steadier sentence, "Then let me hold what you cannot carry." The pressure you feel is real, but it is not ultimate. The old story says your exhaustion means the dream was too big. The better story says the dream was always too big for you alone, which is exactly why grace was required. And grace does not mock your limits. It enters them, it sits inside them. It teaches your breathing to become prayer again. What feels like delay may actually be protection from a blessing you are not yet ready to hold without breaking. There are gifts that arrive too early and crush the hands meant to receive them, not because the gift is bad, but because the vessel still needs shaping. You have called some delays punishment when they were really mercy in disguise. You have named some closed doors rejection when they were rescue. That is hard to accept when the waiting has been long and the heart has become thin. But C.S. Lewis would remind you that pain often becomes the chisel that reveals the final form hidden inside the stone. Nothing in that process feels gentle while it is happening. It feels like pressure, like interruption, like contradiction. Yet the contradiction may be the very place where heaven is making room. The chosen one does not always get a straight path. Sometimes the path bends because the soul needs strengthening before arrival. That does not make the promise uncertain. It makes the promise sacred. And sacred things are often slower than impulse, but surer than fear. You are not behind. You are being prepared for what would have overwhelmed the old version of you. If any of this landed in you, type the number 888 in the comments and come back to me. That simple agreement is not magic. It is a quiet sign that you are still listening. It says the thread is still there, and the heart is still open enough to answer. What you write is small. But the meaning is not small, because God often uses small agreements to steady a shaken soul. Let the number become a marker between who you were before this word and who you are becoming now. The hand that types it is saying, "I have not left the conversation," and that matters more than you know. Come back to me after you write it, and stay with this turning. You may have thought the tears were only yours, but there is a grief in heaven when a chosen one stands one step away from surrender. Not because God loses control, but because love refuses to pretend that your weariness is invisible. The image is like a candle still burning in a drafty room, the flame bending, almost going out, yet somehow holding. Your life has felt like that room at times, with the window open to too many cold winds and your own strength looking small beside them. But even a bending flame is still a flame. Even a weary faith is still faith. That is why the pressure has been so personal. It has not been generic hardship. It has been a specific place where your soul and your fear have been talking too loudly to each other. You may have sat at the edge of your bed and wondered whether one more prayer would change anything. You may have stared at the ceiling while the house slept and felt the loneliness of carrying invisible battles. Yet heaven has not been silent. It has been steady. It has been watching the candle not to condemn it, but to guard it. What C.S. Lewis gives you here is not an easy answer, but a tested kind of hope. He knew that sorrow can hollow out all the false things, leaving only what can survive fire. That kind of hope does not sound triumphant at first. It sounds quieter, almost severe, because it has been burned clean. You are being invited into that kind of hope now. Not the kind that performs confidence, but the kind that keeps returning to God after disappointment has taken a bite out of the day. There is a dignity in that return. There is a holiness in coming back again when the soul has already tried to run. The old way of coping was to hide your need and call it strength. The new way is to let need become a doorway. God is not frightened by the real condition of your heart. He is already there, waiting under the ash, waiting beneath the ache, waiting where the candle still burns. Look closely at how much energy it has taken just to remain present in this season. Not to conquer it, not to impress anyone, just to remain. That remaining has cost you sleep, focus, ease, and sometimes the language you once used to describe your own future. The body keeps its own record of waiting. Shoulders that stay high too long become a testimony. Hands that clench in silence become a witness. A jaw that tightens when you hear bad news tells the truth before the lips are ready. You are not weak for noticing these things. You are awake, and being awake in a hard season is costly. Yet there is a strange gift in that cost. It shows you exactly where grace has been meeting you, not in the polished version of yourself, but in the one who still keeps showing up. The blessing is not lost because you are tired. It is being protected from being received with the wrong posture. You cannot carry holy things carelessly and expect peace to remain. So God slows the pace. He deepens the vessel. He teaches the heart how not to drop what it once feared losing. This is why despair often tries to speak with urgency. It wants you to believe that because the answer is not here yet, it will never arrive. It wants you to confuse timing with truth. But truth is not shaken by delay. If anything, delay often reveals what truth already was. You are still chosen when nothing feels impressive. You are still held when the room feels empty. You are still being led when the map is not yet visible. That is the kind of sentence C.S. Lewis would have understood because he knew how to speak to the heart without lying to it. He did not ask suffering to pretend. He asked it to become an opening. And openings are not gentle while they are forming. They stretch, they split, they expose. But they also let light in. Your life may feel exposed right now, yet exposure is not the same as defeat. The light that is entering is not there to shame you. It is there to show that the blessing is closer than the fear said it was. Type the words "I see it" in the comments and come back to me. Write them as a witness, not as a performance. Let the phrase name the moment your heart recognized that this was speaking directly to your season. There is power in naming recognition because recognition keeps the truth from slipping back into the fog. What you type is a small seal on a large inner shift. It says, "The candle is not out." It says, "The room has not won." It says, "The flame saw what the night could not hide." The metaphor has been the candle in the draft, and now you can feel it moving, not disappearing, but leaning into a steadier wind. That movement matters because what was once trembling is beginning to learn its own shape. You have spent enough time fearing that every gust would be the end, but some winds do not come to destroy the flame. They come to reveal whether the flame is still alive. A candle in still air tells one story. A candle in motion tells another. It shows you what survives contact with the truth. Your soul has been like that flame, tested by loss, by waiting, by the ache of almost letting go. Yet here you are, still lit, still present, still carrying a light that has outlasted your worst predictions. The quiet grief in heaven is not because you are failing. It is because you have almost mistaken your trembling for extinction. But trembling is not extinction. Trembling is often the evidence that life is still pushing through the wick. There is a scene many people know well, a kitchen light on late at night, a sink full of dishes, a phone face down on the table, and one person standing in the middle of it all trying not to break. That is where a lot of holy decisions happen. Not on a platform, not in a crowd, but in the private geometry of a tired room. You have met God there more often than you realized. You have met him in the pause before opening a message, in the silence after hearing bad news, in the breath taken before tears finally came. Those small places become altars when you stop calling them empty. The candle does not need a grand cathedral to prove it is light. It only needs one room willing to be seen. That is what this season is doing to you. It is making the hidden visible. It is turning private endurance into a sacred record. And when the flame leans, it is not surrendering itself to the wind. It is learning which way the shelter is. Your chest may tighten at the thought of trusting again because trust has cost you before. That is real. But the cost of distrust is also real, and it quietly hardens the heart into a place where blessing cannot be received without fear. There comes a point where protection becomes prison if it is held too long. The candle in the draught teaches you that the answer is not to extinguish what is alive in order to avoid pain. The answer is to let it be guarded. God does not ask you to fake courage. He asks you to remain within his care while courage grows back. That is a different thing entirely. It means your weakness is not your final identity. It means your history with disappointment does not have authority over your next step. The flame survives because it is tended. Your life is being tended even now in ways you cannot fully see, and the fact that it still burns is not a small thing. It is a sign that the blessing has not been dropped. There is also a holy tension between what people see and what heaven sees. People may see the pauses, the tears, the slow answers, the days when you are less available than before. Heaven sees endurance. People may see hesitation. Heaven sees discernment. People may see a nearly broken heart. Heaven sees a heart that has refused to become cynical. That distinction is important because cynicism often arrives dressed as maturity. It tells you that expecting less is the same as being wise. But wisdom is not the same as shutting down. Wisdom keeps the flame, even if the flame is smaller for a season. The candle in the draught is still a lamp. It still has purpose. It still sends enough light for the next step, even if it cannot yet light the whole horizon. That is how God often works with chosen ones. Not by flooding every question at once, but by making sure you do not lose the path while you wait. The light you have is enough for obedience. And obedience, even tired obedience, is a miracle. You may need to hear this plainly. The blessing is not asking you to be perfect before you can hold it. It is asking you not to let go of what God already placed in your hands. That is the difference between endurance and despair. Endurance says, I will keep this candle upright. Despair says, because the room is hard, I should throw it down. But the candle has value precisely in the dark room, not only in the bright one. Your season has taught you that some lights are only seen when everything else is dim. That is why your present struggle may be more revealing than your former ease. You are learning where your own strength ends and where grace begins. You are learning that the blessing is not carried by feeling alone. It is carried by faithfulness, by returning, by breathing, by one more step when the step is small. And that kind of faithfulness is not invisible to God. It is being counted. It is being remembered. It is being returned to you in quiet ways. When you feel the impulse to withdraw from what God has promised, come back to the candle. Come back to the small light in the dark room. Come back to the truth that your trembling does not erase your calling. There is a line C.S. Lewis would seem to place in the air here. The light shines most clearly when the dark cannot pretend to own the room. Your life is beginning to teach that line to your own breathing, not as a slogan, but as survival. And survival, when it is touched by God, becomes testimony. The flame has not been wasted. The draught has not been stronger than the hand that tended it. And the blessing that seemed almost lost is being held in a steadier way than before. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Sometimes the body says yes before the mind can explain why, and that quiet yes matters. Stay with this candle a little longer, because the steadiness it gives is preparing you for what comes next. What has been trembling is becoming testimony. There is someone in your life who needs this exact message tonight. Someone who has been working harder than the people around them and still feels like the door has stayed closed. Someone whose face came into your mind as I was speaking, maybe because their silence has become heavier than their words, maybe because you know they are smiling while carrying something that hurts. Send this to them, not as a recommendation, as a delivery, the same way it was delivered to you tonight, by appointment. A candle is never only for its own room. It can be placed where another person's night has gone cold. That is part of the mercy in what you are hearing. You are not being comforted only for yourself. You are being made into a bearer of light for someone else who is nearly done. And when you pass it on, you are not losing anything. You are joining the same mercy that found you first. The flame that helped you stay alive can also help someone else breathe again. This is why chosen people are never only private stories. Their endurance becomes a bridge. Their grief becomes a map. Their waiting becomes a place where others learn they are not the only ones. The heart that nearly gave up can become a shelter for another heart that is still trembling. That is not sentimental. It is how grace travels. It moves from room to room, from hand to hand, from one tired soul to another. And if you have lived long enough in the draft, then you know how precious a steady flame can be. You know how one light on a kitchen table can change the whole feeling of a house. You know how a voice that does not rush can keep panic from taking over. That is what this message is becoming now. Not a performance, but a lamp placed where it can be useful. And useful mercy is one of the clearest signs that heaven has not forgotten the earth. So do not despise the years that taught you how to keep showing up when you felt empty. Those years were not wasted. They were teaching your hands how to guard what matters. They were teaching your heart how to tell the difference between noise and guidance. They were teaching your body how to endure without becoming hard. That is a rare thing. Many people survive by closing themselves off. You are being asked to survive by staying open just enough for grace to enter. That open space can feel dangerous because it exposes the tender place where hope lives. But it is also the place where blessing is received. You cannot receive with a fist. You receive with a hand that has learned how to hold and not crush. The candle image is teaching that quietly. A flame is not controlled by force. It is protected by care. Your life is being taught the same principle. Care, not panic. Presence, not collapse. Trust, not retreat. These are not easy words. They are necessary ones. There comes a point when the soul must say, I will not let my exhaustion rewrite my identity. That sentence may be the hidden turning in this whole message. You are not the failure your fear described. You are not the delay your circumstances suggested. You are not the empty room, the cold wind, or the almost extinguished flame. You are the one God has kept. You are the one He is still tending. You are the one who has been held while learning how to breathe through disappointment. That identity is not built on a perfect track record. It is built on a faithful hand. C.S. Lewis would have called this a place where suffering is not meaningless because it has become a teacher of reality. And reality, when seen through grace, is never only pain. It is also purpose. It is also keeping. It is also a light refusing to die. So when the old voice says you are finished, answer with the truth that has been speaking beneath it. The blessing is still in your hands. The candle is still lit. The night is not the owner of your story. Type the words I'm chosen in the comments and come back to me. Write them as a declaration, not as a wish. Let the words stand where your fear used to stand. Let them tell the truth about what heaven has already marked. There is something powerful in naming identity after a season of trembling, because identity is what keeps the flame from being named by the wind. Come back to me after you write it, and let that confession settle deep. The candle has now become more than a flame in a room. It has become a sign that the dark never got the last word, even when it tried to speak with confidence. You have been through too much to confuse survival with randomness. The hand that held the wick was patient. The breath that shielded the flame was intentional. The room that looked empty was not empty to God. It was a place of tending, a place where quiet mercy stayed longer than panic wanted it to. And that is why your almost giving up is not the end of the matter. It is the place where the story turns toward the light. The grief in heaven is not the grief of defeat. It is the grief of love watching you stand at the edge of a promise and not yet knowing how close you already are to fulfillment. There is a holy ache in that nearness. You can feel it in the way your thoughts have changed, in the way certain distractions no longer satisfy, in the way old games of pretending feel heavier than they used to. A soul nearing its blessing often becomes more sensitive before it becomes more secure. That sensitivity is not a flaw, it is refinement. It means the false noise is losing authority. It means the candle is finding cleaner air. It means the room, though still dark in places, attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.